Well, welcome back to a new edition of the Threshold Lab. And as we know, in this season, we're exploring the inner game of coaching. And if I could make a Mount Rushmore of coaches that I wanted to engage in this conversation with, Coach Tara VanDerveer would certainly have been on that list, given not only everything that she's accomplished in her storied career coaching basketball, but maybe more importantly too, like who she's been as kind of a pioneer in her sport and for so many in the profession. So without further ado, I'm super excited to welcome Tara to the conversation today. Hey
My
Tara,
pleasure,
welcome.
Zach. Thank you, Zach. My pleasure.
And as I kind of talked about in the beginning, the goal of this is to kind of dive deep into the inner game of coaching, and kind of my job in this conversation is to kind of hold up a mirror to you, so you can kind of share with listeners who you were as a coach, and what guided you along the way, and so many other things. And I think the best way to do that is probably to start at the beginning. And I've heard in some other conversations this wonderful story about your start in coaching. Happened to be with your younger sister, and I was hoping maybe you could share with those listening what that story was, and how you got that start.
Sure. Well, one thing, Zach, I am still coaching. I'm not coaching a team, but I'm actually coaching coaches. So I think I think about this a lot, like how to be a good coach and what makes a good coach. So I majored in sociology at Indiana University, and I planned to go to law school, but I ran out of money around Christmas because I thought I would take a year off, and I ran out of money and went home, and they had just passed Title IX. So my dad said after Christmas, well, what are you doing? And I said, well, I'm just hanging out. And he said, well, you're going to go help coach your sister's team. And my sister Marie is 5 years younger than me. She wasn't really into basketball. Like, we had a hoop in our driveway, and I never saw her out practicing, but she wanted to play because her friends were playing. And I'm like, Dad, I'm really not interested in that. And he said, well, in order to live in my house, you're going to go do it and to eat free food. So I'm like, okay. But they had lost the night before, 99-11. So I was like, oh man. But I think I learned two really, really important lessons. And the first one was, I'd come home and my parents would say, well, how come you didn't play Marie more? And I'm like, Mom, Marie can't dribble, or, she doesn't shoot, she doesn't play defense. So I think, number one, parents sometimes are really unrealistic and biased, but because they love their children. And I love my sister Marie, and so I also, you realize that everyone on a team is someone's sister, or brother, or child, or it's so. I think that was something that it stuck with me through coaching, is to, sometimes even as mad as I might get, or unrealistic as some of the parents might be, I just had to come back to that and know I learned that lesson.
One thing I hear you share there is, the love that you had for your sister also comes in the form of honesty too, right? Which
Yeah.
shows up in as a coach, I'm sure, throughout your career as well, with players that you had through numerous stops. And one thing that, in talking with other coaches, I know that when we transition into a leadership role or become a coach, we're oftentimes are influenced by who we saw lead, or who we saw coach, or who we were surrounded by as coaches. And I've heard you describe yourself as a copier, somebody who loves to study the game, and other coaches. Who were some of the coaches that really shaped your approach and style around coaching?
Well, from the very beginning, really, there weren't girls' teams, so I didn't really play on a team and I didn't have a coach, but I watched a lot of practices, and I watched the high school practices. Basically, I watched practice from the seventh grade on. I did my homework in the gym because my dad was getting his PhD. And so I'd watch the high school practices and the college practices. And I think, more than anything, I saw really good teachers. These were teachers in my school were also the coaches, and I watched them teach the game of basketball just like it was a subject. And they weren't yelling and screaming and carrying on like maniacs. And none of the coaches I ever watched did that. But I did, then I went to Indiana. I watched Coach Knight, and he was a great teacher. I was at Ohio State, and Fred Taylor was a great coach. He coached like Jerry Lucas and John Havlicek in a national championship, back in the 60s. I was at Idaho. I've been at Stanford and watched, 6 or 7 different coaches here. And I always tried to be in the gym. Like whenever there was a ball bouncing, I was watching, is a coach working with a player? Is there a visiting team coming? I would just try to really be a sponge and learn as much as I can, go to clinics. And I think the thing that through that, I watched other people, but I also developed my own identity of what kind of coach I was. Both of my parents were teachers, that I wanted to be a great teacher. I wanted to be, I wanted to teach fundamentals. I wanted to have basketball be a team sport. And that's what I focused on.
Hearing you kind of describe that, teaching certainly being so integral to your philosophy and your identity as a coach, I'm curious, for some that I talk to, I know when they form their identity around coaching, sometimes as important it is to know who you want to be as a coach, it's also important to know who you don't want to be and how you don't want to coach.
Right.
And early on in your career, what were some of the things that you certainly didn't want to be central to your approach as a coach?
Well, I think that first of all, like basketball or really any sport, or even, we all like to do things that are fun. We like it when it's enjoyable, and so I wanted practice to be fun and enjoyable, and that people would look forward to coming to practice. They'd look forward to being around each other. It's not to say that it wasn't going to be hard work, but that it wasn't punitive, that it was, I think, positive and encouraging. And again, it's a teacher. The thing that's different for a coach is we have, 40 public exams, or the pros might have more than that. But, I just really, I wanted to communicate to the players, to my staff, to the fans, just the passion I have for the game of basketball, how much I love the game. I love watching the game, being part of developing young players to help them, be the best that they can be. Anyways, just to, focus on that and not be, you're going to come to practice and we're going to run you into the ground, or, belittle players, or be, in any way, make them feel anything but excited.
One thing that I hear is, and I don't know if you would use this word or not, but like create an environment where people feel empowered, you feel a sense of joy, and also that doesn't mean that there's not hustle too, certainly, and hard work mixed in. And you've kind of touched on this a little bit, but I'm curious, like when you think back to how you wanted your players to feel while being led by you, what did you want them to feel?
I think more than anything, there's a quote by Maya Angelou that, says that, I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And I want the players that, played for me to really just say, wow, that I had a great experience. I loved playing on the Ohio State, Idaho, or Stanford team, the Olympic team. I got better. That I'm better because of it as a player, but as a person. And I was a great teammate, and I learned how to be a great teammate. The things that like I would value would be, that people are, honest. They have integrity. They practice hard. They play hard. They're good to each other. They hold each other accountable, but they're kind, and they listen to each other. And that there's really, like great teams are teams that really love to play and they love each other, and that's, I think sometimes there's like we're winning teams and then there are championship teams. And to me, the championship teams win. That's kind of a given, but they really enjoy the process, and you're sad when it's over because you'll never have that season again, and it's special. So
I love that differentiation, winning teams versus championship teams. What's a team for you that comes to mind that really embodied that combination of not only high performance on the court, but also that love, of like in connection with one another too along the way?
Zach, I'm really fortunate. I've coached a lot of those teams.
Yeah.
Our first national championship in 1990, the team was a machine, but I didn't have to deal with, a lot of problems or issues or drama. Just our Olympic team in 96 was a fabulous, fabulous team. They, went undefeated, and I mean, we could take on the world, and we did. And they really set a standard for, I think, greatness with that 96 team. I've had, several teams at Stanford, one team or two teams, like never lost a game in our home arena. They just had a lot of pride. They were extremely competitive. And a lot of it is having your very best players be also your hardest workers and your best leaders. And that's the formula for, team success. When you have that, they're able to what was it, keep everyone in the circle, like make sure that everyone is staying tight, and if someone's wandering, you're bringing them back. And leaders, I think, will do that. Team leaders will do that.
You mentioned at the beginning you were fortunate to have a lot of those, and I don't think that that's an accident. But, just with everything that you've described, and also knowing too that leadership isn't just a solo endeavor. That a lot of those teams, to your point, there's multiple people that help lead the way and nudge people to be back on track. And you mentioned some of those being players. I also know you've had a lot of different assistant coaches and fellow staff that have worked with you as well. And I'm curious, when you think about how you wanted them to feel being led by you, what was similar and or different for them versus the players?
I don't know that that's different. I mean, I think, on the staff, obviously, maybe you have a different role and a different job, but you want them to feel valued, that every staff person, every player feels seen and valued. And, and obviously, that's easy to talk about, but they have to feel it, and like I know that our staff meetings, we would sit in a room and we watched a lot of video together. We had a lot of ideas. And I think that one of the things I'm kind of proudest about is like my ideas will get shot down, just like, if it, I might say, oh, let's do this. And my assistants would be, that is the dumbest idea. And I like the fact that they could be very honest with me. And, but when we walked out of that room and we went to the team, even if it was a dumb idea, they would go along with it at that point because we discussed it and flushed it out, and they're like, okay, well, we'll try it, but they had my back. So I think the loyalty of a staff, the hardworking, not like I didn't have to micromanage, which is great. So I think a staff is similar. I want them to be excited to come to work, not just like, oh man, I got to go, it's a job, But hey, we're in the gym. Let's turn up the music. Let's not be the last one there. Let's help everyone get better.
There's so much good in what you just described with, even just having those meetings and as a collective staff, like create an environment where people feel permission to disagree and to offer differing opinions. And then, you kind of nailed it with, as you leave those meetings and then you go to the court and you coach your team, it's committed to one kind of mission. It's committed to
Right.
one plan, if you will. And but creating that space ahead of time, just goes to your point, making everybody feel valued. And with that, if you will, I'm curious for you, one of the central kind of premises of, I think, the inner game of coaching is this notion that, before you can lead others, it is important to lead yourself. And when you think about that adage, how important is that, or was that for you throughout your coaching career?
Well, I'm not sure that this is the right road to go on, and you can stop me or correct me, but, I think that it does, a lot of everything does start with yourself. And so like for me, I'm going to do better as a coach if I feel good about myself and I take care of myself, get my rest, eat right, work out. If I'm feeling a tremendous amount of pressure and then I'm going to pass it on to our team. If I'm not confident, the team will know it, the staff will know it. So it is really setting a great example, or doing the best I can to set a great example of, hey, this is going to be challenging, but, I have confidence, I believe in you, we can get this done. Just coming to Stanford, I know that the team the year before I came was like 5-23, but I think within like the first couple months I was here, I said, our plan is to win a national championship. And I think people looked at me like I had two heads, but I believed it. And I was willing to do the work. And, you can't just wear the sweatshirt. You got to sweat. You've got to do the work. And the amount of time and effort and, just that our staff and our players would put in, whether it was the national championship team, the Olympic team, we had no regret. We left no stone unturned. We were going to go to the mat and do whatever we needed to do.
There are two things I really liked in that. One is, so much of leadership can be creating that vision, ultimately, of where you're trying to guide that team, if you will. And sometimes that's creating that vision and showing your belief in it, even before others may see it. And then two, the importance of modeling for the team the same types of principles and importance around taking care of yourself and living and not practicing what you preach, if you will, like how important that was. And I think that speaks volumes in a number of ways. We have another guest in season 1, Chris Peterson, and I've heard him say that most leadership breakdowns occur either a failure to define the standard, a failure to manage the standard, or a failure to model the standard. And it sounds like for you in particular, when it comes to leading yourself, that modeling piece was crucial.
Yeah, repeat that for me so I get it.
Yeah. So the way I had heard it from him, my interpretation, he probably gives a much better snapshot, is most breakdowns in leadership fall under one of three buckets: a failure to define the standard, so be clear on the expectations, be clear on what's the vision for the team and the individual; failure to manage the standard, so that's like the accountability piece, giving feedback, nudging people when they get off track, and then the third piece is a failure to model the standard. And I think about it in the sense of you coach for over four decades, and I think I counted 45 to be exact. Is that right?
Right.
Right.
I started when I was 10, Zach.
That's incredible. It's so amazing. And I think what's interesting is, and I'm not picking anyone in particular here, but I think sometimes, coach may have 20 years of experience, we'll say, but how much of those 20 years are 1 year repeated 20 times? They're kind of just rinsing and repeating the same thing year after year, versus learning and growing and, having 20 unique individual years as they continue to grow. And certainly there will be threads that stay the same. So all of this to say, I'm curious for you, how did your coaching look and sound different from the beginning of your career towards till the end?
Well, I think that there's probably some things that, like, the very first team I ever coached would say that would match the very last team in some ways, and that I would hope that they would both say that I was very enthusiastic about coming to the gym, working with players, that never changed. I'm very passionate about the game, and that's kind of where I start with things, is that I'm excited to be there, I'm excited to work with you. But I think a couple things, maybe, I think I learned, like, through the process of, maybe the drills that we do and kind of the preparation became more sophisticated. We used more analytics, or we used more, video became a bigger part, embracing new rules of the 3-point line, or, things like that. So I think that, even though maybe I felt I was somewhat creative in the beginning, hopefully I was more creative at the end of my career. I think that as I learned more about the game of basketball, there was this saying, I think it was maybe Pete Newell, that said, the more you know about basketball, the more you know there is to know about basketball. So like you never, like it's always just getting to be this bigger picture of what's happening out there. But I feel like as I kind of, made my way through my career, that I could see the game better. And so, maybe in the beginning I didn't see it as well or as clearly. You know how they talk about a baseball where the hitters, the ball slows down for them and they can see the pitch and they know what it's going to do. And so, I would strike out, but, I feel like that as a coach, I could anticipate things better. I could help our team. I think I was more helpful later on, as a coach. But I think, probably as a person, a lot of the earlier players will say, oh, you sure mellowed a lot, but maybe that's true too, where you, instead of being the kind of the maybe strict parent, you become the more flexible grandparent.
You mentioned there kind of with the evolution in the game, between rules / technology and data and video and all those things, and how that informed your coaching, if you will, or played a role in it. How did you balance that with also, trusting your instincts? As somebody who studied so much basketball
Right.
and was a student of the game, how did you find that balance?
I found that actually that the analytics for the most part just backed up my instincts. So like I would, as an example, let's say I'm watching you play and, you like to go right and you like to, maybe, take threes or layups. I mean, I would watch that about you, and then I would go and look at the analytics, and it would say, yeah, Zach goes right 75% of the time. He, is either shooting a three, so I really felt like the analytics backed up what my instincts were. So in some ways, I could use technology to just maybe help myself get quick, kind of, oh, yep, I'm seeing that, that's right, and then move on to the next thing. So it helped me with the time to watch a lot of video.
Sure, sure. And I think with that, you don't get to that point without a level of openness, right? And being open to change and open to the evolution of things and being growth minded, which again, everything you've shared thus far and what I've read, it certainly embodies who you are. So I'm curious, for you as a coach, what was your process for growing either personally or professionally? How did you go about that?
Well, I would say that, I'm really fortunate in that I have a lot more to my life besides basketball, but I might always be involved with something and it would remind me of and help me with basketball. Just like little things like I play bridge, and like, here's the hand you have, you got to play it, and how to, like some people can get do you play bridge, Zach?
I
So
do not know.
but
I'm
it's like
learning here.
some people, like you're really good, or if you play Scrabble, I play Scrabble. So like some people can find a big word and other people can find only a little word, so it's really like making the most of what you have on your team. So I will look at different situations and think about that. But I also like I love orchestra music, and I'm like, that's like a basketball team, so I would use like analogies in life that would help me. And I am a copier. I watch a lot of practices. I will go to, how do I grow? I read books. They didn't, I can't tell you, I listen to a lot of podcasts, but, podcasts are a big thing now. But I would go to clinics. I would watch people's practice. I would go pick their brain. I mean, we had great coaches, great coaches at Stanford. And I would go and talk to them about, well, what works and what doesn't work? And, how can I get better? And I mean, we had a photographer who happened to be a head of our psychiatry department at Stanford, and he came in to show me pictures, and I said to him, "Well, I'm worried about this," and he said, "All right, let me shut your door," and we talked for 3 hours. So I I like to pick people's brains. I'm a curious person.
And you kind of just, I think, hinted at this, and I'm curious if you might go a little further, is how much did that curiosity show up in realms outside of basketball? So, kind of along those lines, who were some of, or what were some of the other sports even, or arenas that you pulled from to influence your coaching or your messaging?
Well, seeing an orchestra, how everyone's got to be together on that. You can tell when players aren't playing together in that. And the importance of, I use the analogy of an orchestra with our team because like some nights it's going to be the violin solo, some nights it's the flute solo, some nights it's the cello solo. So it's different. People are going to step up in different nights. I like to sail, and sometimes it's really windy and you better, you got to really hang on and just to get through, get through kind of some bad patches of water or wind, just to, and just know that it's going to get better. I think so many things that, that I like to do are, I can relate them to my basketball coaching life. Whether it's, again, music, whether it's travel, just all kinds of things, and just say this would be really helpful with our team. And I tell them stories a lot, and I use examples of maybe historical figures or, that this works. A lot of coaching is not the X's and O's as much as it is kind of just connecting with players and having them buy into what you want to do and having them have trust in you and confidence in you, and that then you reciprocate that trust and confidence.
That last 2 minutes, that was a beautiful little segment there in terms of you kind of sharing. Just I think it's an example of that curiosity that is so at the heart of who you are, how that shows up, and that when you're just when you're a curious person, you just look for opportunities to find lessons or to find stories that you can share in any realm or no matter where you're at. And so, as somebody who loves to find stories and bring in stories with messaging, I can certainly empathize and resonate with so much of that. And we're kind of maybe staying with this theme of your growth and development as a coach. And over the course of time, to evolve, sometimes it means letting go of some things too. So things that maybe you once believed that over the course of your career, maybe you change your mind about. And so I'm curious around that. What's something that you used to believe earlier on in your coaching career that over the course of time, maybe you changed your mind or stopped believing in?
I don't know, Zach. That's a hard one. I mean, I feel like I evolved as a coach, and I think that I also saw the world changing around our players. So so like as an example, 30 years ago, social media wasn't important, but this is important to young people. They're on their phones all the time. So it's how do I adjust to the changes? It's not so much maybe that I'm changing, but that I have to adjust to the world changes, just the things that our athletes and our staff and the things that they're going through, that I'm not just acting like those aren't happening, that in fact, yes, NIL deals or the portal or, things like, TikTok, they're real. So, I've got to be a part of that world if I'm going to coach the young people that are in that world. Try to meet
No,
people where they're at.
beautiful. No, and you mentioned earlier just kind of building that connection and just going to your point. That starts with knowing what's important to people. Not only you defining that for yourself as a coach, but also then taking the time to find that in those that you lead. And The other thing around development that I was really curious to hear more about. So I read this story that in your last season at Stanford, you started working with an executive coach who affiliated with Stanford, Kristen Moss,
Right.
and I'm curious to
Kirsten.
maybe
Yeah.
hear Kirsten, yeah,
Yeah.
how that that partnership started,
Mhm.
and we'll kind of start there, and then I'd like to hear more.
Well, I think that two things happened. One, the, at the end of 2023, our team had a very disappointing finish. And it wasn't just that we lost a game or games, it was how it felt. It didn't, the, the team was not connected. I was not, I was not able to communicate in the way that I wanted to with key players on the team. It was not a happy time. It was not a fun team to be on. And I knew that I was at the end of my career, and I just knew that that was not how I wanted to end. And so then I spoke at a leadership summit for Stanford and the business school, and I'd spoken at it 5 or 6 times before. And I asked the director, I just said, I feel like I need help with the leadership of our team. And in my mind, I wanted someone to come in and help me train our captains or our upperclassmen, to be better leaders in the locker room. And he recommended Kirsten Moss, who is a former dean of admissions at Stanford. And Kirsten thought maybe someone else would be better, but we were able to recruit her to help. And she did actually an individualized leadership kind of class for our team, and a customized short class that our team did in the spring. And while I thought that I was working with Kirsten to work with our team, in fact, she was like, "I'm going to help you," and she was fantastic. She really, I think, just kind of drilled down into, here I had coached for like 44 years at the time, and I think she really helped me up my game. And I listened, and I took her coaching very seriously. And one of the things I did in the beginning of the summer, my mom was 97 at the time, and or maybe she was having some physical issues, and she was not real happy. And I'm just like, the month of July, I said, Mom, let's have the best month ever, and let's every day really work on having a great day. And I think that attitude of kind of best day ever really helped. And so I thought, well, if that works with my mom, I'm going to try that with our team. And so the combination of kind of saying best year ever with our team, working with Kirsten, really making the effort to connect at a deeper level with the players on our team, and just work really hard at it, putting the time into it. I don't, it was what maybe the players at the time needed. And I think we had some great results, and that we had a great year. We always want to finish higher, but because we didn't win a national championship, but I think we did about as well as we could with the players and the situations that we were in. And I could leave feeling, I could look in the mirror and say I did the absolute best I could this year, and we had a best year for that particular team.
I think it's a great story to kind of hear what led into that, and also how you went into it thinking, hey, Kirsten's going to be here to help our team around like some of
Yeah.
these key leaders around leadership. And then you mentioned your own game as a coach kind of leveled up in the
Yeah.
process. And I'd be curious maybe to have you expand a little bit on that for you. Like when you think about how you as a leader or as a coach leveled up per se, from her working with her, what did that look like for you?
Well, I felt, and I felt like in talking to her that, I didn't know her from the beginning, but as I talked with her, I realized that she was someone I could trust, and I could be honest with and open with, and talk to her about what I was seeing and what I was feeling, and then she would come back to me and just say, here's some ideas, or a lot of what she would say is, well, to tap into people's feelings, kind of going back into the Maya Angelou quote of, how do you feel and what are your players feeling? And that connection, to really work on the connection of the relationship. And that's hard sometimes right now in athletics. It might be different in professional athletics, but in college athletics, there are a lot of college athletes that say, I want to, I want a relationship, but a relationship is a two-way thing, so it's that it's not just a coach dictating that this is how the relationship is going to be, but that young people too are committed and loyal, and then it's challenging right now. It's challenging with all the things that are going on in the modern landscape of college athletics and pro athletics. When you look at the players that are traded, here comes a trade deadline and all these players are traded. I mean, it's very disruptive. It's challenging. But I think more than anything, one of the very specific things that Kirsten talked to me about that I think is very helpful is, like let's say, Zach, you're playing on the team I'm coaching, and and you come to practice, and instead of me saying, oh, great, Jack, you had a really good practice, I would say, Zach, I really appreciate how hard you worked today. So not talking necessarily about what you did, but how I felt about what you did, and to connect the feeling of, I really appreciate how hard you worked today. I really, you are such a great, you're such a great leader. Well, I'm really proud of your leadership, like connecting an emotion with the action.
And I think that that fits so well with some of the comments you made at the beginning around what you wanted your players to feel as they were being led by you, and it sounds like getting more specific around that and including the emotion certainly helps create an environment for people to feel those things that you mentioned. And with that, this might be a good segue now to where you're at. As you mentioned, you maybe have retired from coaching on the court specifically, but now you are coaching coaches, and you're an advisor for the athletic department at Stanford, and what a wonderful resource available now to those coaches. And I'm curious, for you, what advice would you give to coaches out there on maybe the benefits of working with another coach, or just working with somebody to kind of be a sounding board?
I think I'm kind of in an official capacity now as a quote coach's coach, but as long, for about at least the last 7 or 8 years, I've been the senior coach on staff, and numerous coaches have, come in to talk to me. So I was unofficial a coach's coach, and now I'm officially a coach's coach. And I think that it's something that I wish I'd had. I wish, I did go to other coaches a lot, and I was really fortunate in that I had a coach that was at Stanford, and he was our Olympic track coach. He was also our track coach at Stanford. His name was Brooks Johnson. And I mean, Brooks and I honestly are just soulmates. And unfortunately, he passed away this past summer. But, I always felt like if I had an issue and I had a problem, he would always had my back. And I guess I've been mentored by Brooks. I was mentored by Kirsten. And I want to be someone that is valuable to our coaches, and athletes that are at Stanford, and administrators too, to be able to share my experiences, be able to kind of have a different perspective, be able to sometimes challenge people, but I think listen, be a good listener, and maybe just kind of point them in the right direction, down the right path that will help them be successful as a coach, as an administrator, as a player, for them to enjoy the opportunity more. And then I think the other thing, Zach, that's been really fun for me, in addition to that, is I'm teaching a class. And so I am learning so much about basketball. It's unbelievable. Just like stuff I never even knew about, that is just like so, it's such an incredible game, but just learning the backstory of basketball, it's really exciting.
I can see it. I can see the energy and the enthusiasm and hearing you describe that. And I mean, we started this with just your beliefs around leadership being a teacher, and here you are now,
Yeah,
teaching maybe
yeah,
more
right,
formally.
right.
What tell us a little bit more. What is this class, and
I'm
what has
teaching.
excited you the most?
Well, I'm teaching a class. It's called Basketball Master Class, and so I have taught a basketball coaching class before. That was like 30 years ago, but this involves it's 9 Tuesday nights for about 2 hours, and it involves it's like 100 people in person and about another 400 people on Zoom, and it involves the history, kind of mixing in my history of basketball with kind of teaching the basketball too.
Very nice. Okay. And so with that, one thing again, this speaks to you being curious, and still learning. You just mentioned, hey, I'm learning all sorts of
I
things
am. It's amazing.
that I which is cool. So and this could be related to basketball. This could be related to coaching or leadership. Are there still questions that you find yourself pondering and like reflecting on a lot, or challenges that you're still, trying to solve for yourself, or maybe now it's for others? Does anything come to mind with that?
Well, I think that what I try to do, like I'm asked to speak at different events, and I mean funny things. I mean, not funny, but like the different things at Stanford, like, medical school stuff. And I'm like, I'm not a doctor, but like, how does teamwork, how does leadership, how do my experiences, and my challenge, I think right now is kind of just to kind of distill the experiences and the lessons and be able to communicate them, with, without someone asking me the questions, but be able to put it together and be able to share it with people in a way that they benefit and they're like, oh, they can take a nugget, they can take a nugget, or they can remember a story and, go from there.
And I think that's again a good segue as we kind of come down to the final kind of piece of this of our conversation, and I'm curious, like, as you start to distill, over 4 decades of experiences and lessons and amazing stories and teams that you've gained. If you were to kind of distill down, and this doesn't have to be the ultimate 2 or 3 things, but if you were to distill down 2 or 3 things that you'd want to stress to younger or less experienced coaches at the start of their careers, what would you want them to know?
Well, I think I guess I would start with, not trying to be someone else, but to be authentic and like really be yourself. But don't be satisfied with yourself either. Grow as a coach, learn, kind of challenge yourself to improve. I think that I would say, to a young coach, to outwork people. I mean, you want your players to get in the gym and get extra shots up. Well, study game, film, do things that really help you develop as a coach. And I think that another thing would be just to kind of take it one day at a time and really enjoy that day. Don't be, oh my gosh, we have to win this game, or just say, do your. We kind of have a saying with our team: do your best and forgive the rest. Put it out there today. Really work hard at being the best person you can be today.
I think we see this certainly with athletes and players and just all of us as human beings today in today's day and age. It's easier than ever to have our minds drift to the future or get kind
Hmm.
of stuck on the past. And what I hear you really describe is the importance of just being in the moment. And
Right.
part of that I think speaks to that joy piece that you highlighted earlier. And one question, this is a little bit different. We kind of framed the last question around what advice you might give to others. Now I'm curious, if you were to write a letter to your younger self when you were
Hmm.
just starting to coach, what do you think you'd write to them now?
Um, I think I would be this kind of the same thing. I'd say, Tara, be yourself, enjoy the journey, appreciate all the young people that you're going to work with, and like really, see them and value them, and just have a lot of fun. Life is a short, this life is too short, and don't stress about everything. It'll all work out, and
Mm,
just to just try to just really enjoy it and be someone that be someone that brings out the best in people. Be someone that's fun to be around.
mm, beautiful, beautiful. I love that. I'm gonna ask one more question, but can I
Okay.
pause for a minute just
All
because
right.
I got my dogs jumping on
Oh,
my
no problem.
lap
What kind of
here.
dog do you have, Zach?
Well, I have four,
Oh
so
my
uh,
goodness, Zach.
yeah, we have two little ones and then we have two big ones.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Now, how about you? Do you have dogs?
Well, I have one big baby. I have a red lab,
Okay, okay.
and I had three, but I never got to four. Zach, I'm jealous. Four is a
Well,
lot. Four is a lot.
four is a lot. Four is a lot. My wife and I we welcomed our son just over a year ago. So we have a 1 year old, and he four sounded good until we added also a kid
Yeah,
into the mix.
yeah. Those
Now
are
four
lucky dogs,
like,
though.
is way
Oh,
too many.
that's great.
Yeah, it's fun. So all that to say, I want to kind of bring us to the end, and
Okay.
one question I'd love to ask, it's maybe a little different, is when you think back on your career, what's something that you're proud of that maybe you haven't gotten an opportunity to talk about, or that you don't normally get an excuse to share?
Um, well, I mean, obviously, it's really exciting to have players that are drafted number one that get to play in the Olympics, win gold medals. I mean, all that stuff is it's great. I'm not going to deny it. But one of the things that I was really most proud of, I think, was one time we had a player that when she had her first child, she called me 1 hour after she had her baby. And I'm like, what are you calling me for? I don't know how to change diapers, but it was really fun that she wanted me to be part of that experience, and I valued that.
I know at the beginning you mentioned not only important for you to help these players be excellent on the court, but you also mentioned being kind of model citizens and great members of a community and just their personal lives too. And so I think that's a very fitting
Mhm.
example of having that opportunity. And one of the fun things about coaching is you get not only an inside look at who they are on the court, but also you get to really build those relationships with them away from it too. So I love hearing that, and
Yep.
we've covered a lot of ground, a lot of the court, I would say, Tara,
Okay.
this conversation, and I just kind of to close here. Is there anything else that you feel like is important for you to share, or things that you'd like to share that's on your heart or mind before we come to a
Um,
close?
I think that you know, I guess what I think about is just that I think through sports, there's so many. I mean, sports has taken me all over the world. I mean, coaching, basketball, I think sports are such a great thing, and that I think we want to looking forward, like preserve the kind of the greatness of it, and not get down in the weeds about all the kind of some of the other things that are not good about it, but to really try to keep the game and grow the game and respect the game, and make sure that kind of we guard the game, and whatever game it might be, whether it's football, basketball, baseball, whatever it is, and just really, I don't know, it has brought me so much pleasure and so much joy, so much pain sometimes too, but it's so great to be part of athletics and sports. So I'm very thankful for that.
I think it's been fun to hear you talk about that from not only the 4+ decades as a coach on the court, but also now the continued work you're doing in the realm of sports and those that you're supporting at Stanford and beyond that. And I think I had heard too that you're now maybe co-writing a book or writing a
Yeah,
book
we're working on
too.
a book on,
Beautiful.
yeah, we are. So I'm talking to all the coaches at Stanford about excellence at Stanford. So, yep, we're working on that.
Sweet. Well, that
All right, well,
sounds that
nice to
sounds
meet you,
wonderful.
Zach. Good luck with your
Yeah.
project. All right.
Yeah.
And
Thanks,
keep in
Tara.
touch.
Yep, grateful for your
All
time.
right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Zach.